All right, this is the Committee on Government Operations Public Safety. This is Thursday, September 13th, 2018. We're at 6 p.m. I have Councilor DePiero.
Here.
I have Councilor McLaughlin.
Here.
I have Councilor Delasola. Here. I have Councilor Marquez.
Here.
We have 4 members present. We do have a quorum.
My colleagues, please join me in saluting the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, gentlemen. Mr. Clerk, please read the first item.
Item number 1, this is a resolution by Councilors Anthony DePiero and John McKinnon that a representative of the auxiliary police appear at the next government operations meeting to discuss new badges and funds appropriated for the auxiliary police.
Are there any questions? I'm not even sure why this is still on the agenda, but Councilor McLaughlin?
You're the sponsor, so that's why I was wondering if you...
Yeah, unless Mr. Strong has some more information to add, please indulge us. It should turn green. There you go. The questions for Lieutenant Strong, or you want him to provide information?
One question. You can provide it.
So that was an old piece pertaining to the equipment, but we are going to be going into a new direction with the pertaining to the auxiliaries.
Councilor McLaughlin?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman. In a new direction, meaning what, if you don't mind? You don't have to elaborate.
We're probably not going to be using the auxiliaries anymore, based on an audit that we conducted on their operation and some things that I uncovered. And based on that investigation, we have decided to, after speaking with the chief, the mayor, we're going to try to go and use a reserve police list instead.
Well, that's a bombshell. I think we need to, I'm not sure if this is the right piece to do, Mr. Chairman, but I think we need to at least hear some more information about what happens. We've been swearing members in most recently, right, new members to the auxiliary police. I don't think within the last couple of months we just brought in a new group of individuals to now not utilize them totally. I'm not sure what really happens with their appointments because we've been swearing them in on a regular basis, if you will. So I don't know if you want to refer this back to sponsor where it has your name on it. It's your decision. But I would...
yeah, we could always have a separate discussion another time about, moving forward.
I think we have to have...
But this is about the badges and...
Executive...
Councilor Marchese?
Well, are you front?
Executive session with the mayor and the chief of police and whoever from the representative of the police department, just to hear their side so that we at least are brought up to date to understand if we're going to dismantle it, how you properly dismantle it and how you properly go forward with bringing it into reserve the list and eliminating that list. So we wish my colleagues, but.
Councilor Marchese?
Yeah. You said the reserve, police, the reserves?
So it's going to be a work in progress. So basically, you can have people who are on the police list, the civil service list, be moved to a reserve list. So when the time comes, we can either have them working with us so we can see what their capabilities are, if they're going to be a good candidate, and establish that list. So in the event that someone retires, someone gets, God forbid, someone gets sick, we could take them right off the reserve list and they'll be ready to go.
Does being on the reserve list mean that your active time starts right away?
That's something that we're still
Yeah, that could
talking
be
about.
kind of scary, having 10
Sure.
people a year on reserve list.
Sure.
Give them pensions, so
Yep.
something we have to look at.
Sure. It's still in the still in the infancy, and we're still talking about a lot of those issues.
What do we do with this?
Councilor Napolitano, I believe, has something to add. Please feel free to come forward.
Good evening, Council Peter Napolitano, Council President. Right. There's two pieces regarding the auxiliary. Now, I've been actively involved with the administration and the chief trying to, again, get the situation resolved with the auxiliary, getting them back on the floor. This piece is carried over. This is regarding the spending and the badges and so forth. There is another piece. There was a piece that was sent to this committee Monday night. That's the piece that goes into specifics about the reserve list, the conversations as far as what's going on with the auxiliaries. Some of that may be more appropriate in the executive session. Again, met with them constantly. I'm a former auxiliary myself. I served 12 years as an auxiliary police officer. I hate to see the program go, but there was a level of experience and expertise that was there when I was on that, the situations and that the lieutenant is referring to have indicated that level is not there. As far as the specifics about the reserve list, there's a lot more to it, and because it's not on this agenda, I'd suggest holding back until the piece comes on, because Councilman McKenna and myself put that on specifically to be able to explain what's really going on here with this and why the need for the reserve list is. The bottom line, Councilman Marchese's concerns about having a list of 10 people gaining seniority is legitimate. On the other hand, between the attrition rate of retirees over the next 3 to 4 years and the increased demand at the casino, that's not likely to happen, because we're going to be needing to add on anywhere from 20 to 25 new officers on over the next 3 to 5 years. A big part of that has to do with retirement. Officers that are my age, people of my peers that are still on the force and are just getting enough time in to be able to retire. So, I salute them for still doing the job. I know at 61, I sure as heck couldn't do it anymore.
I'm not there yet,
and
Peter.
you're
I'm not
younger
there.
than that. So I just want to clarify. There's a difference between this piece and the reserve issue that was on the agenda Monday night. That's not before you because there wouldn't have been enough time to get it on the agenda. So, but there is more information. Look, I met with the administration 7 months in a row. I tried to arrange a presentation by some of the members of the auxiliary who are professionals in law enforcement in the private sector. Unfortunately, things that occurred have gone past the point of repair, and I think that's a conversation that needs to be discussed on that other item and possibly an executive session. So that would I just want to clarify why this is.
Understood.
And what the difference is. Thank you.
So I think at this point, this piece should be referred back to sponsor with the other item on the calendar coming forward.
One quick question.
Yep.
Are other cities doing this? They eliminating their auxiliary police department?
Councilor Marchese asked if any other cities were doing something similar to this.
They eliminated the auxiliary police to put a reserve?
There are other cities that surround us that do have an active reserve list.
And do they still have the auxiliary?
No.
No?
If I could, the difference from the reserve list is that these are people who've taken the civil service test, have already been to the police academy on their own dime, not the city money, are fully certified and qualified to carry firearms. They'll be able to do details. Again, the more information that the chief wants to allow them to do, again, that's not my place to go into greater detail, but that's the reason being. Right now, the auxiliary police by charter are unarmed. And that puts people that in a potentially law enforcement look in a hazardous situation, because, as I think Lieutenant Strong will test, perps don't distinguish whether you're carrying or not. If they think you're law enforcement, you're as much of a target whether you're carrying a nightstick, flashlight, or 45 caliber gun, for those who don't know what that is.
Thank you, gentlemen, for appearing this evening. Thank you very much. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded to refer item 1 back to sponsors. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Item 1 has been referred back to sponsor. Item 2, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Chairman, if I can just, 1 second, I apologize. Item number 2 and number 3 are both of the same merit, of the same issue. I'm not sure how that occurred.
Want to take them
but
collectively, Council?
If we take them together, item 2 and 3, we can discuss
Is there a
both.
second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded to take items 2 and 3 together. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
All right, item number 2 is a resolution up by Council McLaughlin that Mr. Greg St. Louis and the city tree arborist appear at this meeting to discuss the concerns of residents in regards to the condition of some of the city trees. Item number 3 is a resolution up by Councilors McLaughlin, Capone, and Delasola to invite Kevin Noonan, Operation Manager for DPW, to this meeting to discuss tree work that is desperately needed in the removal of tree stumps.
Councilor McLaughlin.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, can we invite up Mr. St. Louis from DPW, please?
Hi, Mr. St. Louis.
Greg St. Louis, DPW Director, Engineering Director.
Mr. St. Louis, good evening. Nice to see you tonight. Mr. St. Louis, we have spoken about this a little bit previously, as late as this afternoon. There are many phone calls that I've received over the summertime. I have, as Councilor DePiero, we've spent a lot of time this summer on the streets, talking with residents and meeting with folks during campaign season. And one street that stands out particularly is Francis Street off of Chelsea Street. All the tree limbs are real low. You can't walk down the street. You actually have to go out onto the, you can't walk down the sidewalk. You actually have to go out onto the street to be able to get down Francis Street on both sides. I'm not sure if they were planted at the same time, but they are both very low on both sides. Washington Street, as we had spoken about, got cleaned up. There was some low hanging branches, and that got resolved. But there's a tree on School Street that the homeowner has been asking to have removed because it's causing property damage to his wall and to his home. And the city arborist came out and declared it not necessary to come down. But if you go by and look at the property, it is clear that the tree roots is under his retaining wall, and it's starting to lift the wall up, as well as the sidewalk panel in front of his home. There is a couple of other issues that I could give to you after the fact, but if you drive around the city, any street almost, you're going to find a tree stump. The tree's been cut down, and they leave the stump in the ground. And I just don't see any of them getting removed. And I know that we spoke about it. I know it's kind of a lengthier process, and I know we're sort of behind. Sure. But if you can fill us in on some of that.
So certainly, we all know we had a fairly long winter this year. A couple blizzards in March really banged up a number of the trees in the city. And to that end, National Grid Electric actually only recently took down a number of trees along the cemetery that were overhanging the street that were endangering those power lines. So if that gives you a sense of the backlog of trees that National Grid has, you know, we're in a similar situation where in a number of those blizzards, a lot of trees were taken down or had fallen and were cleared from the street and just create a large backlog for us. Certainly, new street trees and historically street trees are already trimmed above average height of a person walking so that we don't run into those types of scenarios. We do have a work order management system that we try to use to continually go through our backlog of trees and address them. One of the conditions that has come up in the last several months is an issue with DigSafe, where National Grid Electric is a member of or hires out their DigSafe marking to OnTarget. National Grid Gas does not do that. National Grid Gas DigSafe markings are marked by field staff. So the strike in that condition has certainly created a backlog with them where if there's a tree anywhere near a gas service that hasn't been marked out and we know there's a gas service there, if they haven't cleared us to remove the stump, there's no markings there, you know. Sure, we're checking the liability insurance box, but there's certainly some unknown risk factor there that we don't want to engage in. So we're trying to work through the list. You're going to see in the next couple of weeks that we have actually hired some outside contractors to do long overdue work at the cemetery. There's some older trees in there that pose a health and safety risk, and a number of those trees are going to come down this fall, followed by planting new trees to replace those. It's part of any sort of sustainable forestry type program where if you take a tree down, put a tree back up, and try not to take them all down at once. when it's too late. So we are working through the program. If there's a need to hire additional outside contractors to address them, we will. But we're getting a handle on it as we speak.
Just have one follow-up on that, and I will yield the floor to my colleagues. Ms. St. Louis, you have a list growing of tree stumps in low-hanging limbs? Is that what you said? There's an active list?
So when calls come into 311 or the DPW office, they use a program called Q Alert or Q Send to create a ticket, and that ticket gets routed to both Parks Department and then the Forestry Department, as well as our tree warden. So all three of those divisions look at the tree, evaluate it. If the tree is living and there's an option of replacing the sidewalk panel, then the sidewalk panel is potentially replaced. If it is deemed there's a historic wall that was damaged outside of the tree's growth just due to the age of the wall, we try not to just take down street trees because somebody needs to repoint a historic landscaping wall.
Is there a chance of you being able to issue us the list that's active so that we can see it, so that we can kind of correspond off of what we may have received for phone calls? And again, I know probably all of my colleagues can talk about locations across the city, but I'd like to see a list, and I can say, okay, Highland Ave is already on the list, or Clark Street's already on the list, or
Absolutely.
That way we're not wasting your time flooding you with the 20 phone calls of trees that you already identified and aware of. But if there's something new, we'd like to at least get it onto the list and then, start the process of being able to identify what the cause is and how to be able to rectify it to make it safe for everyone, including the homeowner. So I was wondering if you could issue that list to us.
Absolutely. And if you ever have a question on that, the 311 office should be able to bring it up actively in front of them as well.
Okay.
But I can print that for you.
Yeah, if you could print that, that'd be great, just so we can see it. And but Francis Street is one of those streets that I'm really concerned about, because when I was down there, it was really a tight situation with the sidewalk and the height of those trees coming down.
Sure.
So if you could take a ride by there and just take a look at it and see if I think it would just need some pruning. I think it would just need to be trimmed back, height-wise. I'll yield the floor to my colleagues, but I appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you.
I did see some crews in the cemetery today, so thank you for that. Councilor Della Sola?
Good evening. On some of the trees that we found are dead, are we looking at the gas company may be responsible for some of these trees? Because I know if we have gas leaks around the area of the trees, they will die, and I don't want to just go in there and replace every tree that we see that's dying, and the cost gets up there. If it's from the snow or bad soil, that's one thing, but so before we go in to take a tree down, do we have the gas company go out and look to see if there's any records of leaks around that area?
Certainly, the gas company has a program where, in order for them to classify it as a leak, they have to detect a certain number of
Correct.
microns or whatever.
Percentage
unit they
gas.
want.
I'm in the industry, that's why I'm following the statute.
In order to attribute a particular tree's death to a particular reason, I mean, you have to be pretty certain of the environmental characteristics. Typically, street trees don't get enough water to begin with, and that's new street trees, that's old street trees. Tree pits in general typically need to be 20 square feet, and there's no urban environment in Massachusetts that gives the street trees 20
Have you come across an area like Prescott Street? I know the road's been done over, the old main's in there, it's still leaking. I see, when I go down and visit my parents, I can smell it. But the 5 or 6 trees that are dying on one street, that will indicate there is a leak. I mean, I know if we have random one every 5 streets, that's a different story, but
Yeah.
it just might help the situation. I don't want to plant it and then have it die a year later.
Sure.
If the gas company doesn't do their work.
I've heard this before, to say that someone believed that the gas main was killing the tree. I
Correct.
don't have particular knowledge as to how frequent that is, or if it's a particularly strong indicator in a given area. All I could say is if you smell gas,
Correct.
call Natural Gas gases immediately.
Right. Okay, other than that, the stumps, I know, there's a lot out there. We have to get at them. It takes time and manpower, but I'm glad we brought this up, just to throw
Absolutely.
an alert out there. Thank you.
What's your pleasure, councilors?
I have just one
Councilor
last
McLaughlin?
question, Chairman. Mr. St. Louis, do we have a list of what tree stumps have been dig safe? Because National Grid, right, they are a company that always drag their feet with our city, whether it's double poles or street lights. They're always telling us that they're doing something, but they're actually not really doing much of anything, to be truthful, and I think we could all agree to that. Do we have a list that they've said they've dug safe these 20 tree stumps, and we've gone out and checked to see if they really have done so?
So I haven't done this before, but when we call into DigSafe, we have a community number, so all of our tickets fall under one ID,
Sure.
if you will. I could potentially try to ask them for the list of those. I don't know how often they issue that. I assume they would. Certainly, part of our 311 system, when we dig safe a tree, that date gets recorded in Q Alert. And the way DigSafe works is you basically have 3 days from when you call it in. That checks the box for insurance purposes. But if you go to a site and they don't write no gas, that means they weren't there. So there's been a number of trees lately where I've been following up with the Parks Department saying, I thought we were going to take down this tree Wednesday, and
Because I'll be honest, the
it
tree
wasn't
stumps,
dig-safed.
the ones I've seen around, and not that I paid attention to all of them, but the ones I've paid, noticed, and I don't see a dig safe. And I know dig safe. I work with dig safe every day, so does the Council Del Solar, and I haven't seen the dig safe marks on many of them, and that's why I'm wondering if there's even any of them in the queue that are ready to go, that have been dig safe and are kind of in the line of ready to be removed. And
I guarantee you, if I repoured the sidewalk, they'd be out there with a can of paint the next day.
exactly. So if you can try to pull that list for us and just try to keep us in the loop. I'm going to refer this back to sponsor, but I would like to talk to you and again in maybe 90 days from now or something like that. And we don't have to do it here. We can just do it, maybe 90 days. You can just give us a follow-up email or something just to let us know where we stand on removing some of these.
Absolutely.
I would appreciate it.
Thank you.
This time, Mr. Chairman, if no further questions, I'll make a motion that we refer this back to sponsor and just ask Mr. St. Louis to keep us in the communication in 90 days on how progress is going, and if he could issue those lists for us so that we do have an idea of what's going on. When a constituent asks us a removal question, we can get back to them with an answer.
Mr. St. Louis here, just ask you a quick question on number 4.
I can address questions on both 4 and 5. if you'd like.
Okay.
Okay, so is there
Second.
a second motion made and seconded to refer items 2 and 3 back to the sponsors, the request that Mr. St. Louis provide the requested information? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
All right, item number 4. This is a resolution by Council Stephen Simonelli that Mr. Kevin O'Donnell appear at this meeting to update the council on the opening of Air Force Road with regards to traffic and public safety issues.
Chairman, make a motion. We invite up Councilor Simonelli and
Council Simonelli and Mr. Saya, feel free to sit in your usual seats if you're more comfortable. Do you want to provide an update first, Mr. St. Louis?
Sure. So a number of years ago, Air Force Road was constructed. There was an emergency access point created at the end of Prescott Street near the tennis courts. This area that does have security gates installed at that location. It's my understanding that a permit for formal access and egress was not granted at that time, and it was more of an emergency access point. Over the last, year leading up to my employment, a number of private entities had both locked and unlocked the gate separate from the city. Certainly that alone poses its own safety and security risk. You don't want to think the gate's unlocked around a corner and hit it. You don't want to think it's locked and bike across the roadway. So over the last year, I believe DPW has left the gate purposefully unlocked so that it remains in a position that is known. Certainly the width of the pavement that was installed for emergency access is not sufficient for two-way travel. As such, we have discussed formally creating a crossing there under stop control with both Tremont Street and Air Force Road. That requires the city to seek an 8M permit through the MWRA, an MBTA access permit across the old rail right-of-way, as well as a Tennessee gas easement for crossing the distribution main located also in that corridor. So we're looking into obtaining those permits this fall, and then we should be able to add that section of that section of roadway to our next roadway contract and formalize the access there.
Mr. Sire, on behalf of Councilor Simonelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you for Councilman Simonelli. There's several questions. You can just answer them when I'm done. Some kind of update that you gave, is it open to the public?
Is currently open to the public.
It's open to the public. Will it be open 24/7 for the public use?
It is currently open 24/7.
Do you see any issues with safety concerning traffic problems, with traffic coming into Air Force Road and leaving Air Force Road?
So right now, the pavement width is certainly an issue. People know enough, having driven the corridor, to take turns going through there, but you may have been stuck behind 3 or 4 cars of travel at any given time. If we seek the appropriate permits, we'll be able to widen that area, make it look like any other street in the city.
Do you see more traffic with Boston Coach and other companies coming and going, using Air Force Road to Tremont Street as a shortcut, also a shortcut from Tremont Street to Route 16?
I think any number of people know of that cut-through in order to avoid the construction on Route 16, the backup on Broadway due to the Route 99 project, in general, the traffic signals in other portions of the city, Main Street and Broadway. I think it's certainly being used as, people go to and from home, sort of a commuting type dynamic down there. And certainly with the improvements that are proposed in that area in the future, with the construction of a new city park, I think the traffic in that area will only grow. So certainly it's warranted at this time to improve that access.
Neighbors complaining about more traffic on the side streets?
Yeah, I mean, it's, again, certain people are going to end up going home or cutting through, whether it's traffic on Main Street or traffic going Air Force Road via Tremont to Main Street. I don't think there's an increase in the number of cars so much as some of them rerouting via other local streets.
This is a hypothetical. What's going to happen on Saturday with the Everett Fest?
Saturday, the gates are open. I believe the path of travel will be Tremont Air Force Road to Warren Street to Tileston. There is a gate proposed at Air Force Road and Bone Up across Norman Street. And there's also 2 other gates at both Kelvin Street and down near BNY and Teddy Peanut Butter.
Mr. Chairman, the committee as a whole need to make recommendations to the full board. If I may, after everyone speak, I'd like to give some recommendations to Mr.
Absolutely.
St. Louis.
Councilor Delasola.
Thank you. That area, like you said, down the road, it's going to be developed beyond what we've ever seen down there. Like you said, the road itself should be wider, in better condition. At the beginning, when we started years ago, Councilor McLaughlin, and Councilor Marchese, DePiero, it was open and closed, like you said, off and on. But I think it needs to be opened because traffic on Main Street is just, in the morning, we all know it's just crazy. Plus 99, plus the rotary where Best Buy is. So I think reconditioning that entranceway, making it wider, is a good thing. Just the public safety of the bike path itself. If we could do something else besides just make it wider, I know we have the flashing lights down there, which tells the people, but I think it's a blind spot when you come down from Tremont into it, looking to your left. So just something you might want to look into, but it's a great piece Councilor Simonelli has on here for the safety of the people. But that's all I have to say on that comment. Thank you.
Councilor McLaughlin.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I would echo that this is a good piece Councilor Simonelli has brought forward. But that being said, I spend a lot of time in that neighborhood, and I actually cross that path many times a day. all hours of the day and night, I'm on that path, crossing that from Tremont Street over to Air Force Road. I haven't noticed any increase of backup of traffic on Prescott Street or Everett Street or any of those streets. There's no like traffic waiting to get through the path, no matter what time of day or night you're over there. So it hasn't backed up. And I've spent a lot of time talking to neighbors down there that have been really happy with that being open, so that they can really get out of their neighborhood. It's actually become a big benefit for them to have that open. So there has been no traffic backups, but I agree that we have to think about some safety measurements that we can put into place so that we can make sure everybody is safe. Whether it's you walk in, you have headphones on, you run the path, and you forget that it's opened. Thankfully, we haven't had any even close calls, I would say. Everybody's pretty diligent, even though it's a small path. Everybody respects if you're coming one way, you kind of move out of the way so somebody can go the other way. It's just kind of worked out well, and it's kind of worked out nicely that everybody has respected the flow of traffic on that path, because I think most people want to use it. So I think they're not going to push the envelope because they want to keep it open, they want to keep it accessible. But Councilor Marchese was approached and called me earlier this week just about this issue, actually, about the bike path to the sea. Individuals were talking to him about trying to get a traffic light, a blinking light or some sort of a flashing light right on the path, so to bring it to people's awareness that there is a intersection crossing there. Greg and I spoke about that today, just this morning. So that it was something that Councilor Marchese and I were going to talk to the administration and get something put on there. But this definitely has a lot of merit to it. But I think things are working out well with this path open. The neighbors seem very pleased with it, and there seems to be no urgency of closing the gate. I would definitely not want to see it closed, but I think that some measurements can be put in place, in small, simple measurements, so that we can do things that aren't very overwhelming, but things that can make things safer and better operation down there.
Mr. Sire?
And through you for Councilman Similli, just the recommendations, and some of them I've heard Councilman's mention. I'm just going to reiterate them so that, we can remember. The entranceway on Tremont Street needs to be widened for two-lane traffic. Is that a possibility?
Yes.
Roadway by bike paths need to be repaved. It's all broken up and it's lumpy and bumpy and whatnot. Well, I'm not a cyclist anymore, but if I was again, no, the speed bump is okay, but anyways, more lighting on the Air Force Road entrance to Air Force Road, Tremont Street entrance also. Air Force Road needs to have yellow lines repainted. Maybe blinking yellow lights need to be on the corner of Air Force Road to Tremont Street. And people using the bike path need more signage to make people aware on the ongoing traffic, which is what Mr. McLaughlin was talking about. It's fine, we're on the buddy system right now, but if we just, I don't mean a lot of signs, just something that's visible so that drivers know and runners know and cyclists know there's traffic. Great, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
All valid points. I think the proper action would be a motion to accept Councilor Simonelli's recommendations and refer them to Mr. St. Louis.
Mr. St. Louis has any information on some of that, because I think it's some of that's already in the works.
Anything to add, Mr. St. Louis?
Yeah, some of this will be delayed based on the 8M permit in regard to widening the roadway and whatnot. Striping Air Force Road, I believe currently we are delaying overlay of that section. Initially, we had anticipated that it was going to be repaved this summer, but due to some of the construction activities down there, they're putting off overlaying Air Force Road in that section. So we can certainly stripe that as it'll be put off another year. The lighting in the street, I'd have to look at the lighting load center, what can be done with the infrastructure to add more lighting. If it's a matter of turning the luminaire on the green poles on Air Force Road, I might be able to just turn it 90 degrees and provide more light there. Or we can look at what the wattage is in the bulb in order to increase the light that way. Blinking traffic signals, specifically any traffic signal or any four-way stop requires the manual and uniform traffic control devices requires you to meet a certain warrant, whether it's crashes or trips per day or turning movements. There's a number of different warrants that govern traffic signals in the city. So I do have a consultant on board to review the traffic signals citywide. If this intersection warrants a traffic signal, then we could hang a flashing red light or flashing yellow light. But if it doesn't meet those warrants, then it would be unenforceable by the local police department and insurance providers, that type of thing. So we certainly can, and we've talked about adding stop signage to the cut-through approach to Tremont Street. I'm going to definitely add more signage to the Air Force Road side to say pedestrians entering intersection or bicycles entering intersections.
Councilor McLaughlin and I have both gotten a few requests for some more improved lighting down by the community growers where they participate in their activities, and just for some more safety, especially at this time of year when it starts getting darker a little earlier.
Sure.
So that's much appreciated.
And there may be an opportunity, if there's other utility poles on the tennis court side of things, we can work with National Grid in hanging like a wall pack to highlight certain areas individually, so we can look into that as well.
Councilor Marchese?
Lower Broadway, Everett, going into Malden. I used to be Malden down by the that new CVS on the right-hand side. They have it. It's where the bike path is. There's like blinking, flashing yellow lights.
Yeah, up in Malden.
Up in Malden.
Crossing
Beyond-
over near
beyond
Easton
Broadway,
Ave.
past the Holy Cross Cemetery, about 100 feet up.
Easton Avenue.
Yeah.
Has a
Right.
gas station.
Has a gas station there on the left-hand side. They have some kind of blinking yellow light.
Yeah, so there are rapid flashing beacons
Yeah.
that we've deployed at some of the mid-block crossings in town.
Yeah.
Something that I would certainly incorporate into our 8M permit when it's two-way access and it's in its final location.
Mr. Sire?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To you for Councilman Simonelli. Just a statement that I hope there's no problems, like a serious accident happens before this comes into place. Amen.
Thank you. So I think the proper motion would be to refer the recommendations in the piece to Mr. St. Louis.
Can we refer this to Mr. St. Louis and ask for an update? Mr. St. Louis, when will you guys go forward with the permanent process to start at least?
I think we could do the permitting this fall and look to construct in the spring.
So I'd like to see how the permitting goes. I don't know if you want to hold this over till the end of the year or something, but I'd like to just see how the permitting process goes and kind of keep us in the loop. But if they give us an update maybe in December, right before the end of the year, and then if we have to, we reintroduce it come the next calendar year, is that a possibility?
Motion is to refer the item with the recommendations to Mr. St. Louis, requesting that he provide an update sometime in December. Is there a second?
Second?
Motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you, Mr. St. Louis. Thank you, Counselor. Mr.
Thank you.
Sire?
Thank you, guys.
All right, item number 5. This is a resolution by Council Della Sola that Mr. Tony Souza from Planning and Development update the council on the progress of the Ferry Street construction project.
Mr. Chairman? I
Counselor?
believe Council DePiero, Council Del Sol had to step out of the room for an emergency phone call. I know that what he's kind of looking for is just a generalized update of where we stand. And National Grid had done a significant amount of work and has been a delay in them going to the next phase. And it's just wondering if, I know with the strike going on, if there's an update of where we stand and how we proceed forward
Sure.
to rectify the condition of that road. I'm sure Council Del Sol is going to join us again if you want to fill us in on that a little bit.
Yep. So in anticipation of the city reconstructing Ferry Street and Elm Street under a TIP project, we notified National Grid of our intentions, and they reconstructed the majority of Ferry Street with a new gas main. A number of those locations were overlaid. We have provided National Grid gas and, upon the union strike, National Grid Electric, additionally with a copy of a number of different locations throughout the city, including Ferry Street, to readdress whether it's installing a new permanent patch or going back and replacing some of their temp patching with a permanent solution. So last I spoke with one of the grid project managers, they were still doing some of the tiebacks into the side street on the new gas main, specifically closer to the Malden line. Certainly, those areas need to continue to be addressed, and we're continuing our conversations with them and their paving subcontractors.
I understand that it's a process, but people are really getting fed up with the condition of the street, and it's kind of, unreasonable that it's still that way. I know it's not your fault, but a little too long, and hopefully it's resolved sooner than later. Councilor Delasola?
Sorry, I had to step out for a second. So I know I missed part of it. I was up back on the phone with the issue that's going on up in Lawrence right now. So the funny part is, it was a 5-year, maybe I'm wrong, it was a 5-year project for this whole thing, from the gas company to the day we finished paving. National Grid come in, put their line in, and try to tell us they're a year ahead of schedule, which is hard for me to believe. Someone's that good a year ahead of schedule. But so we have patches like, I know Council Marchese, I remember we talked about a while back that we went in before they started and paved the street to make it last until this is all done. National Grid come in, did their work, paved, I'll say, 60% of their patches. We still got street crossings going by some of the areas that we hit every day going up and down there. I know my wife, she goes around to Florence Street Park to get home. She won't go up Ferry Street. So I'm just worried about in the future what's going to happen when the water department comes in, the sewer, the electric. It's just, do you know, I'm going to off topic here, I'm sorry if I am. Do you know when the next step is that next utility is coming onto Ferry Street?
So the typical process with some of these larger tip projects is to get the gas out of the way first.
Correct.
Certainly, there's 2 ways that the water work is done. It's either done by the municipality prior to the road work, or it's put with the road work, as they're going to be doing full depth reconstruction anyway. They're going to be owning that corridor. So we're likely going to put the water work with the roadway construction contract. And that's in part due to the fact that there are both rails, cobbles, concrete, hazardous materials. Performing the water work along Ferry Street is going to be very challenging. And there's no reason we can't lump some of that challenge into the roadway project when they're already going to be so heavily invested in that corridor in the first place. So the grid electric, telephone cable, those type of providers, there's going to be a new street lighting system installed in that roadway. Typically, again, when that street lighting is put in, a number of those public utilities use the fact that the road is being reclaimed to lay new conduit or review what's in their conduits and where they need to upgrade. There was an item before you the other day where RCN, I believe, was renting conduit from Verizon, but then they had to install their own at some point. It's those types of items where if they think they're going to have a need for capacity in the future, then they'll put another 2x4 duct bank.
But the magic question I'm looking for is, when are they starting to, I'm going to think the water mains next, is that correct?
I would put the water mains with the roadway contract, which would be in
2019, is it?
It's going to be the fall of calendar 19, which is the 2020 tip. It's the first quarter of the 2020 tip.
Just so that people know, they think it was bad when the gas main was put in. You wait till you'll see. You're going to be driving off Ferry Street like it was in the 1900s when it was dirt. Because when they reconstruct that road and do the water main, you're going to have dust. It's going to be beyond you to ever imagine with the kids in school. And so what we're seeing right now is tough, but it's going to be nothing compared to what we're going to see in end of 2019.
Yeah. And so a number of communities have gone through these,
Correct.
20 million type road projects.
Oh, I understand that. I just wanted to, I think yourself and all of us here, we have to keep an eye. This is going to be, I guess, one of the bigger projects we're going to see. You're going from Lower Ferry all the way to Malden.
Absolutely.
So,
And
but right now, what do we do from now until next year on some of these trenches from National Grid?
So I've been in contact with National Grid since May. Certainly, they've had their own challenges.
Correct.
They've given me a limited number of paving days in which we've done some of the priority areas, like in front of City Hall. We got a big stretch done because we were given a date. A portion of Spring Street was redone for the second time due to settlement. So it's just a matter of getting those days out of National Grid.
Can we give you our list that we may have? I know it's tough spots in different areas. I know it is down there, the White Hen, the Coal Cut Factory, it's tough over there. So I know you'll help us out if we can give you a list of spots that we think that could be done just to keep us going until next year.
Absolutely.
That'd be great.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you.
Councilor McLaughlin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, through you to Mr. St. Louis. St. Louis. So nothing happens on this road work for another year from now, another year and a half from now? Is that what we're looking at realistically?
I certainly don't anticipate any water work being done. If the gas union settles, I would anticipate they'd finish any of their cutbacks into the side streets. So whether that's stubbing out from the Ts they've placed or tying back into other local mains, I believe that work is incomplete at this time.
So this is again going back to the previous piece, but National Grid just always kicks the can down the road in our city, and I don't understand why or why it's accepted, to be honest, because you don't see it in other communities. You see National Grid's feet being held to the fire in other communities, and we just seem to we always get rolled over by National Grid. And I like folks from National Grid, but nothing seems to be completed. Am I wrong, guys? I mean, it just seems like they give you a lip service. They tell you, yeah, and nothing actually gets accomplished. And it's numerous times about numerous different items. It's not just about this, but dig safe for trees, it's street lights or double poles. It's just never ending with National Grid. When do we, we're talking up here every week about contractors, about getting, when do we say to National Grid, enough is enough? Like, we're going to stand up and fight for our residents and take stuff serious, because our quality of life deserves responses from the people that are charging us through the roof for our bills every month. They have no problem sending out their bills to us, and we have no problem paying them, but they never deliver services to us. It's like, it's out of control. It's crazy, to be honest. And it's not you, I know, you're the middleman, I get it, absolutely, and I'm not trying to beat you up on this issue, but it's frustrating. It's frustrating that we continuously get phone calls from every aspect of the city, every city councilor, and we never have an honest answer to give anybody, because you can never get, not you, we can never get an honest answer out of National Grid. They tell you it's something to make you sound good, make you feel happy for the next day or two, and it never comes through. So I'm really frustrated with them. Hope their union contracts are settled reasonably fast. And I think it's time to pull them before us and say enough is enough, and we need to get serious and get some work done and get some dates so that people's businesses, their quality of life, right? People have family that live on Ferry Street, have businesses on Ferry Street. Individuals can't operate their businesses because nobody wants to go down there because their cars are being damaged to buy their product, to go visit their loved ones, whatever the case might be. That's not fair to the individuals that are living along Ferry Street. And you know that, Greg. I mean, you feel the same way, I'm sure, as we do. It's just not right. It's just not right. Thank you. I appreciate you being here. Again, not beating up on you, just frustrated with National Grid, to be honest. And I wish National Grid was here, because I'd be saying the same sort of things to them as I am to you. Thank you.
Couldn't agree with you more, Counselor. Thank you. Anything else from Mr. St. Louis? Thank you, Mr. St. Louis. What's your pleasure with the piece, councilors? Refer back to sponsor and maybe get an update again next year, a few months after the new year?
Well, the only thing is we want to get some. You have to refer back to sponsor until the strike is over, and then reintroduce it saying the strike's over. Where do we go from there? I think that's the right thing. Correct. Not speaking out of turn.
Yeah.
We'll do that. In the meantime, we'll give the list of our location, what needs to be repaired, and the biggest thing is what's going to happen in the future.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you, councilors, more. It's ridiculous dealing with National Grid. I'm sick and tired of it, because we get the phone calls and we're perceived as not doing our job when we are in fact doing it, and they just keep kicking the can further down the road.
Yeah.
Enough's enough.
From hot top to telephone poles, it just keeps going on.
Yep.
Refer back sponsor, wait till their contract, their union issues are over. they
Yeah.
go back to work full swing, we reintroduce this.
But in the meantime, we could get a list together
Yes.
and try to get
Yes.
the city can pave the fill them in, you know?
They can hire a contractor to do the patches.
And then back charge National Grid.
Exactly.
So what's the motion, councilors?
I would say send it back to sponsor, and after the lockout is resolved, we'll reintroduce it again.
Is there a second on the motion?
Second.
Motion was made and seconded to refer this item back to sponsor with the intention of reintroducing it when National Grid their strike is over, which is hopefully very soon. All those in favor? Opposed? The ayes have it.
Item number 6, this is a resolution by Council McLaughlin that a representative of the Pocket Clerk's office appear at this meeting to discuss the issue of pocket stickers for commercial vehicles.
I do have a communication from Ms. Gregory that she is on vacation and unable to attend, but parking stickers and placards are issued out of the collector's office. Perhaps you want to lay this over and invite the collector?
No, just leave it on here and refer back to sponsor, Lee, keep the meeting.
Keep in a committee and
I'd like to ask for an extension for one meeting on this. I will just tell you guys the reason why this is on here. Some of the streets, what's happening is commercial vehicles, big companies, Marchese Construction, GTA, whatever it was, they'd be able to get stickers for all of their vehicles to park on the streets currently if it's under a six-wheel dump, and they would need no reason to have a yacht, have an open-air lot. So you're having these painting companies that have 6, 8, 10 vans.
Yep.
on dead-end streets. I know exactly what you're talking about.
They're getting stickers, and they're parking all over the streets. They got their vans going out in the morning, employees parking there during the day, and they're rotating the cycle. And the parking spots are never becoming open for residents. So I think it's something that we need to look at. I know some dead ends and some Ward 6, and I think we can all name a street that is happening on. That's why I asked for this to be put on, because it's not fair to big contracted companies to have to pay to buy a lot to store their vehicles, and these companies sort of skirting this issue and getting away with it. So that's why I put it on here.
Councilor
Do
Marchese?
we have a definition, what's a commercial vehicle?
Is it defined by license plate or?
Commercial vehicles is,
Defined by license plate, but if you don't have a commercial plate,
and technically in the city of Everett, you can park anything on the street as long as it's under 6 wheels. So a dump truck can park on the streets overnight. It's not under, it's not, and anybody can get a sticker as long as the vehicle is registered in the city of Everett and it's under 6 wheels.
and the oversized vans are starting to appear everywhere.
Yeah.
Exactly,
They were on my
Counselor.
street the other night.
So that's why, Hatch Street is one street specifically is really becoming hampered with this issue and this.
There's been some
down
public
Bryant.
safety issues as a result of it with apparatus getting down that street.
Exactly, Counselor, and I know we've talked
Yep.
about this, you and I, and so that's why I'd really like to see what we can do to try to curb this and try to force these vehicles to find a spot to park, rent some space. If you have more than one if you take home your work vehicle, fine, it's your own vehicle, you take it home, that's one thing. But when you have 4, 5, 6 vehicles on one street, then you're running a business, and you're running a business in a residential neighborhood, and it's not fair to the rest of the abutters and the rest of the neighbors. So that's what I'd like to talk about, and, we'll lay it over and see where we can go in 30 days.
Would you like to invite anyone else?
I'd like to invite up somebody from the police department to see if they are going down and ticketing these vehicles, because I think what's also happening on some of them is they don't have the actual sticker, and they're not being ticketed at nighttime. They're kind of just being skipped over because they're assuming that they have the right to park there. So maybe somebody from
Parking
police
enforcement?
department, Parking enforcement.
They're the ones that would handle that.
And anybody else you guys deem appropriate, but I think that's something that we can all agree that we should talk about going forward, is how to get these vehicles. Again, like I said, it's one thing if you have one vehicle you take home, that's one thing. But when you have multiple vehicles for the same company, it's a different story.
So the motion is to lay this over and invite Ms. Gregory once again and a representative from the treasurer's office. Is there a second?
Maybe from the mayor's office?
And perhaps a representative from the mayor's office. The second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
Second motion?
Second.
Motion made and seconded to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting adjourned.